everyone, and welcome to tonight's Gladiator Soundboard podcast. My name is Jen McConaughey, and I am going to be your host for tonight's podcast. Just to give you a little information about me, I am a Gower parent to a kindergartner and a second grader. I am a school social worker, and I've been doing that for the past 20 years. And I'm recently been on the Gower Foundation board, and I've been doing that for the past 9 months. I am really excited to be talking with Dr. Victor Simon, the superintendent of Gower 62 this evening, about a topic that is really sort of near and dear to my heart. And that is really the safety of Gower students, both physical and mental health safety. So without further ado, I would love to introduce Dr. Victor Simon.
Thank you. Yeah. And thanks to the foundation to put the podcast together and to be committed to get information like this out to our community. This is my 10th year here as the superintendent of Gower School District. Love this place, and it's been a decade now of working in a school district. In the 16 years prior to that, I was in the Chicago Public Schools. I'm actually a high school teacher by training, so a science teacher up front at Whitney Young High School, way back in the 1900s, and then all that time spent in the Chicago Public Schools, pretty large system, different jobs, principal of a pre-K to 8 school, district leader for different kind of levels of responsibility across different parts of the city. And then back in 2013-14, started out here in Gower School District as a superintendent, and been at that job and ever since. So it's been great.
Great. Thanks so much for sharing that about your past experience. And I'm sure you've brought a lot of that experience to Gower. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the really a big concern, I think, that we're seeing at a national level, and that is really one of the school safety. As an educational professional myself, but really more as a parent, the number one concern I have is, are my children going to be safe in school? Are they going to feel safe? And let's be honest, really, any sort of academics, any sort of extracurricular really is all secondary if the issue of safety is not addressed. So I was hoping you could elaborate a little bit on how Gower really ensures safety within both buildings, and how do you work with local law enforcement to keep our kids safe?
Sure. Yeah. Tough, but very important question. And, so I'll answer in a couple ways. I think it's a really involved question, and just start right out of the gate with the fact that we have amazing, long-lasting, impactful, thoughtful partnerships with both of our police departments. So the police chief and the force in Willowbrook, and the police department over in Burr Ridge, and the police chief there as well. These are folks that I talk to often, regularly. They're part of our school safety committee. We meet with them formally on an annual basis, and as needed, of course, as issues may come up and all that, but it's ongoing conversation and partnership that I value most with both of our police departments. We rely very heavily on both of our police departments. There's a lot of pride that they have in their police force and their responsiveness. We measure these kinds of things. So when we call, we see how long it takes. They've practiced in our buildings. They have full 24/7 access to our buildings, our campuses. They have camera access to our buildings and in each of our campuses. So they have their eyes on our school, and they are here very quickly. And there's ALICE training, and if you're a school that's ALICE trained or not, and somehow you get a different badge if you are or if you're not, I'll just let folks know that ALICE is a plan and a way of approaching this school safety, and it stands for alert, lockdown, inform, counter, and evacuate. ALICE, and those different processes are practiced. We're not an ALICE district, but what I will tell people, and some people have an issue with that, but what I would say about it is it's because of the privilege that we actually have in our school community, which is these great, highly responsive police forces. So we will follow the beginning of that acronym, where it is an alert and a lockdown. By the time we're informing anybody what's happening, literally the cavalry's here. Literally, the police department is here. And as much as it might not be a plan, the approach that we have in our school community has been really about relationships first. And I think that matters. And I think that as we start to see more and more about some of these circumstances and learn more about particular profiles and whatnot, we can point to some things about maybe feeling less than or not part of. And we make a point in our school community that those relationships are right from the beginning and are not only strengthened and continue to grow, but are maintained all the way through their experience here. So social workers like yourself, counselors, school psychologists, we have school nurses, like these are all supports around every individual student, along with our teachers and administrators. So again, we're very much forward leaning when it comes to how we approach this. It's a very personal issue for me. Actually, a survivor of gun violence myself is a young man, probably beyond the scope of this podcast, but pretty violent incident, and nearly lost my life at that stage. But it makes me really fine tune how important safety is. And I'm also a parent, so I know that the level of responsibility for a school administrator doesn't get any higher than 100 out of 100. And that happens the moment you leave your children here at school with us. So, I take it seriously as a parent as well. So, in order for students to perform to any level, they have to feel safe. And we put a lot of time and energy into making sure that's the case. But I can only tell you that in words. I can tell you what our plans are, tell you our approach, but really it's just the way that we respond. We've had some instances occur over the years, and I think we've responded, in a timely fashion and well. And that's what I would say about our safety at both campuses. So long answer to say, yes, children are safe here at Gower.
Thank you. I think that information is really very helpful. And you started to kind of create a nice segue into kind of the next topic, and that is really taking a look at some of the mental health issues that we've seen really increase after kind of reemerging from the pandemic, and kids coming out of isolation, kids who hadn't been in school for a period of time, kids who experienced different trauma during the pandemic. What has Gower's response been to that? And how are you managing maybe some of those behaviors and demands on staff and demands on students?
Yeah. And you're right. I think that is a great segue into the next question. And when we think about physical safety and talk about our campuses being safe, that some of that comes with a price, right? It comes with the idea of, gosh, we have to do a lockdown drill. And that could be an experience that is a negative experience for some and all the rest. So we think about the mental health as well. So you mentioned in your introduction, kindergarten and second grade parent, right? So like and then you use this phrase, which I love, reemerging from the pandemic, right? Like it's, you were right in the thick of it. It's like everybody, but those particular grade levels, kindergarten, second grade. I mean, so you're aware that we stayed open and we were open the entire time and all that kind of stuff. And that doesn't happen without the kind of relationships we have with our staff and the commitment that we had and still have with our staff that's exhibited day to day. So I think that part of this reemergence, so to speak, is the benefits of being committed and open during that time and being there side by side, shoulder to shoulder with our families and students from the beginning of it. So if there were losses, so to speak, and if there were traumas and all those kinds of things, we were right there while it was happening. So I think there wasn't, upon reemergence, surprise of different kinds of challenges. We were watching this happen and play out in real time while students were in class, and we weren't sure we'd be able to do that in a safe way. And I'm glad that that we did. So when we think about this reemergence, we know, to answer directly, what we've put into place during the pandemic, like extra social worker support. The school psychologists have been in our school for some time. The school nurses have been in our school for some time, but the extra social workers and counselor support that we built in during the pandemic, our Board of Education made a real clear commitment after the recommendation was made to put these in place to say, listen, we don't want to just do this now and then watch it leave. This is something for the long haul. And so proud to say that those recommendations were not only accepted, but we've thrived because of it. And those social worker and counselor positions are still here. So we've expanded. And again, this idea of forward leaning. We do have a social and academic and emotional behavior screener. It's a risk screener. It's called SABRS, but this SABRS data is used annually, actually a couple times per year. But the idea here is it allows students to share information, that social workers and counselors have information that if there is any kind of risk involved, that we could bring that support to the family. And I think that's really critical. So some of these issues that get highlighted when we reach out to families and parents, guardians and whatnot, when we reach out to those parents, they're saying the same thing. They're like, yeah, I've noticed that as well. Where can we get some, additional support? And they've been very grateful that Gower's ramped up the effort on that side. And it's not just on the mental health side only. I think about what our school nurses do, still testing now. I mean, we brought COVID testing to Gower, and one of the first probably in the country to do it. And we were really aggressive about bringing it here. And it's part of the plan to get us open. And, we've preserved that. Does it get used as much as it used to? No, definitely not. And I'm actually glad about that. What else we have is strep testing and flu A and B testing. And even most recently is RSV testing. So it's just like when you're able to respond to challenges in a thoughtful way, you recognize that this could actually open up the door for us to get stronger overall, even when we're not in a crisis.
Yeah, thank you. I think one of the aspects that I've really come to love about Gower and really appreciate is really the sense of community within the school. I have to believe that some of that sense of community, some of that, all the staff are always working together to make not only the school more beautiful and wonderful, but they're so invested in all of our children. And I have to believe that some of the part of the curriculum used from the Capturing Kids' Hearts has maybe played a part in some of that also. I was wondering if you could speak to what that initiative is and how that has kind of been rolled out into the school systems.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a process, right? We can Google, Capturing Kids' Hearts, CKH. You could look this up. It comes from the Flippin group out of Texas. And it really comes from a school psychologist and social worker group and counselors that recognized all along, they've recognized us all along that, and I said this in the last podcast, that it's not about reading, writing, and arithmetic, what we do in education. That's there. Of course it's there. So you're hearing the superintendent say, wait a second, did you say education is not about reading, writing, and arithmetic? Of course, that's part of it, but it's relationships between teacher, administrator, principal, and whatnot, student and teacher, student, parent, teacher. All these relationships really play out in ways that are critical. So Capturing Kids' Hearts is a process that reminds schools, right? This is not rocket science. So it's actually a pretty easy answer. It's a process that, in my take, reminds schools of what's most critically important: the relationship, being intentional about the relationship and the culture of the school. So 2012, 2013, it's a long time ago. I was in Chicago Public Schools interviewing for the role of superintendent in Gower. Intimidating and thoughtful process, meeting all kinds of people, all kinds of committees, all kinds of parents, Board of Education and so on. And part of the information that was provided was student data from surveys that were happening. I mean, imagine that, right? Like they actually dared to ask students like what they think. Feedback, imagine. So, and they got that from parents too, which, by the way, reminder, I don't know, this will probably come out in a week or so. There'll still be plenty of time to take the 5 essentials, parents. So please, if you haven't, do so. But anyhow, back to the CKH thing, we know that it's about the relationship piece and it's about being intentional of school culture. So you can have all this other stuff going on, but if the students aren't feeling like, we're there, kind of wind in their sails, so to speak, a champion, an advocate, helping. What are we going to talk about? Reading, writing, and arithmetic, so to speak, from a traditional sense. So capturing kids' hearts reminds us of that. It's a process that teachers back in 12-13, I got the student data, and it said things about our supportive environment through the students' eyes. The supportive environment of Gower School District could use some work. It wasn't anything outwardly negative. It just said if there was an area for improvement, this was it. So as a new superintendent, that's really important information. So we vet that information, talk to staff, talk to the leaders as I'm coming in, and recognize that this capturing kids' hearts process that was being considered, it's out there in the background, is like, maybe this could be a fit. Let's go forward and invest fully in trying to find out if it will work for us. Meaning, let's bring training to our staff that reminds them 10 years back about being intentional of building a positive school culture for students first. Students are first, the rest comes. But if we can get that part right, wow, what could the future hold? So being fully committed to putting all of the resources in that direction, and really just holding and drawing, first drawing and then holding to a strong, bold line that says we will be champions for our students as educators. What does that look like? What does that feel like in a school system? And that's the commitment that was made. So that might sound kind of like fluff or theory. So what does it look like? It looks like asking students right from the beginning, how do they want to be treated? And how do they think we as teachers, as educators, want to be treated? Real stuff, right? Real human being type stuff. And then what will happen when we disagree? There will be disagreements. So what happens in a social space when people disagree? How will we treat each other then? Should be the same as the other two, right? So once we know that that's our, quote, social contract, or the way that we've decided that this school will operate, it becomes woven in the fabric of everything that we do. Children first, children at their best, right? Like capturing kids' hearts. You can't get to their mind unless you have their heart. I know this personally as a student. I know this. That's why I'm so motivated and inspired by it. But now 10 years later, capturing kids' hearts is just part of our identity. Again, it's a process that our teachers have been trained in and retrained in, and we have, we've been a model for this nationally. So this is just, we made a decision to go in a particular direction about building a positive school culture and have stuck to that. It's not easy to do. It's almost sometimes not even believable to say, because first of all, you have to have an administrative team and teachers consistent over time. So I've been here for 10 years, a 10-year superintendent, they're pretty rare, in one district anyway. So all that said, this becomes a way of being. It's our identity. So it is kind of like everywhere at the same time. It's the way we are. We talk about it as culture. So yeah, 10 years ago, teacher training, invested, double down, triple down. Every time new staff come in, we get them trained in how to go about building these positive school cultures. And that's kind of the way we just have been to the benefit of many. So that said, we test this every year. That's why I'm so adamant about people taking the 5 essentials survey, because our students take it too. Our students from 4th grade up take the survey, and they tell us what they think about the supportive environment year in and year out at Gower School District. And I love that. I love the fact that 4th graders, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders get to say, my teacher believes in me, strongly agree, strongly disagree, or somewhere in between. Whereas what does that look like across hundreds and hundreds of kids? And that's how, and we respond to that, right? We want to make sure that that is at the highest level we can get it. So yeah, that's capturing kids' hearts. I know it's a lot.
Yeah, thank you. Is the development of the Gower families at West, is that sort of part of that continuing of building community and things? I mean, I know that's happened over the past few months, and I know my kids have really responded so positively to that. And it's such an exciting opportunity for them to intermix with all the grade levels over at West and be exposed to a different staff person. And I have nothing but positive things to say about it.
Great to hear. Yeah, thank you for that feedback. And I know any staff from West and certainly Middle that hear that would be happy to hear it. At Gower Middle, we have houses, and you'll come to learn about that. It'll feel a lot like the family piece, but the houses came this year, and the Gower families at Gower West came shortly after. And yes, the idea is to expand on this strong sense of community within the school, right? Like, so the teachers just do so much. And this one, to say it as simply as possible, is like, this is us working smarter instead of harder. It's making some natural connections that would be there if we had the space to let them and encourage them to happen. So this is just a real creative way and approach that the staff at Gower West got behind. And I'm proud of them for it, because this could easily have been something to say, hey, we're going to think about this, we'll pilot this, we'll committee this, we'll analyze this. And, a year goes by, and then do we still have the same effort behind it? And this was like, you know what? This sounds like something we could benefit from, and our students will benefit from in so many ways. Let's go. And the fact that they know the school well enough and the needs of students and families, and knew the support would be there, that's a testament to the leadership of Gower West. And I'd say the same for Gower Middle, for the houses. But yes, directly, it's an expansion of that community building effort across grade levels, between students, creating new spaces that weren't there before. And as much as you're getting positive feedback, I mean, those days and those activities, they're amazing. I mean, they have a bit of an assembly feel to them. Like, there's the excitement in the halls, and in the classrooms, the buzz is positive, refreshing, and it's just it's a tall order, and it's a lot of work. But yeah, it's showing some pretty good early positive returns, and yeah, we're happy for it.
Great. So on the topic of community, I think one of the strengths of the Gower community is really our diversity, and our difference in cultures and traditions and perspectives. I'm wondering, how does Gower approach that? Embracing people's differences, but also making sure that the schools are, maintaining state standards, maintaining the different obligations within the state school system.
Yeah, sure. That's a big question, and it's probably, pre 2019. I think it's an easy question, right? It's like, yep, we recognize our diversity, strength and diversity. It's great. We're super responsive to it. And as far as curriculum, we have our committees. We're very transparent about what we do. We take parent input, and everything's published. And we go about our business, and people are happy with the results. And it's pretty much that's the easier answer. Then times are a little bit more turbulent now in and around public schools and public school communities. And Gower School is no stranger to that. I mean, there's a history here with some challenges over time. Some of them were, things that other communities will never deal with or have to have dealt with, like, toxic air and things of this nature, right? Like, that bring up, again, windshield looking forward. But I'm a big believer, and I know I've laid out some quotes tonight, but another one that means a lot to me is calm seas don't make good sailors. And, so tough times, I don't think it builds character. I actually think it reveals character. And I think that's true for individuals. I strongly believe that. I think it's true for groups of people. And I think it's true for organizations. And therefore, I would roll it up and scale it all the way up to, I think it's true for communities. So when there's some turbulent times, yeah, it's tough. It's frustrating. People are on different sides of issues, but you move forward, you get to a new place. And I think those spaces and those involved are better off for it. But it does reveal the character of a community. And Gower has been so strong throughout these challenges. And I think that what we try to do, I tell the staff every year, And this is, I realize, being recorded and it'll be out there. So it'll lose the thunder next year when, new staff come on. But I kind of quiz them and say, what's our largest department? And they're like, department? What do you mean? Like substitutes or, lunchroom staff, custodial staff, bus drivers? And I'm like, no, yeah, something like that. Like, what's our biggest department? Special education department? Like, I don't know. And I say it's our communication department. We don't have a director of communication, but our communication department is our largest by far because everybody on staff is part of our communication department. They all represent Gower School District in so many ways. We have a lot of staff that are here that are residents of the community. So what we say and do and how we act and behave and all the rest, it says a lot about who we are. And we've been steady and stable. Like, you know what Gower's about. I would hope, like, if you're here for a little while, you start to get a sense of, like, this is what Gower's about. Like, they take this relationship stuff, really serious, and they get the results academically too. And that's an amazing reputation to have. But with all that, to those, as much is given, right? Much is expected in return. So we know there's a lot that we benefit from in being in a community that's well-resourced, but we take that and we try to do something with it. So everybody's part of the communication department. So back to this idea of, how do we answer this community piece with the diversity? So we want to make sure that how we're culturally responsive shows this is a diverse community. The diversity gets talked about in so many different ways. It gets talked about racially. And we're racially diverse, but also it doesn't get talked about enough sometimes religiously. We're religiously diverse. We're politically diverse. We're economically diverse. So what we believe, right? Our values, families, that there's diversity there too. So Gower is true in the sense of diversity. And I think coming up, that's another plug for this coming up Friday, but well, by the time this comes out, it'll be last Friday. I hope that we'll have a packed house for multicultural night, but that's just I'm sure we will, but that's another event to just show the identity that we have. But it's starting with that, right? It's calling it out. The beginning of your question is, we're so diverse and it's strong. I agree. But it's also about how do we respect that fine line between all these different ideas and values, while we still have to meet all these obligations that people might not be so comfortable with, depending on the cultural diversity and whatnot. And I understand it. So when I started the answer, I said, hey, 3-4 years ago, easier. Now with more turbulence, politically, socially, right? Like this is my 26th year in education, and I don't spend a lot of time watching news. I get my news, but I don't spend a lot of time watching news. But you dip in now and then, and you start to see headlines that are like, yeah, public school this, public school then, and it's like I can't recall a time. I think probably the most recent in modern history would probably have been like civil rights, about all this like sides on an educational issue of something. It would have been like literally integration of schools racially is probably the most like, profound issue that was being debated at our times. And now it's like, seems that it's about things like curriculum. And that's okay, right? It's just, so when I hear that, and I hear this question about what's the fine line? Like, I think it's a real firm line in the sense that we are a diverse community and we are a culturally responsive community. There's a difference between being tolerant and being responsive. So this isn't just like, oh, it's fun, we're a diverse community, great for everyone. It's like, how do we get better because of this diversity and these differences in opinions? So we make a point to make this information as public as possible. So because this is going out to parents and whatnot, it's a really good opportunity for me to say, we've had questions about curriculum come up over the past. What about these new social studies standards or social science standards? What about the sex education kind of stuff that's coming out? Like what I'm worried, I'm hearing things, I'm seeing things that I saw it on social media or I heard on the news and my neighbor said this. Like I totally understand that as a parent. So what's the answer? The answer is we have to be really clear, coming back to the idea of our communication department being number one, is that we have to get this information out to people of what it is that we do. Right. So for instance, at the January board meeting, we talked about social studies standards that have changed over time and how we've implemented them, how specific units are mandated and how they get implemented. And people read that and see that and come across it and go, okay, it makes sense. And it's really not all that serious of an issue anymore. Now I understand a little bit more. But something like sex education, so to speak, that gets a different kind of attention. So where is that? Well, we were answering that question so often, we put it on we made a webpage for it. So what I would direct parents to do while they're listening here, but like the idea is gower62.com. And then on either of our school pages, there's a tab for parent info. Drag down parent info, and you'll see a separate tab there for curriculum, instruction, and assessment. That's where we put that information. And in fact, added information about all these instructional mandates. What are schools mandated to do? It's probably beyond the scope of this specific, podcast. But if you click there, you will see actually the list of items that are required and where they are. So in what grade levels and whatnot. And they are highly specific. Off the top of my head, thinking of some of these things, it's like particular units about U.S. history that are to be included, right? Black history, women's history, contributions from different groups, ethnic groups, religious groups, so on. These are all parts of what gets put into these units over time at an age appropriate level. So, I encourage parents to just know the information firsthand. And I think that is just so valuable. I think back, I graduated high school a long time ago, but on my class ring, I have my basketball number on one side and I have the phrase knowledge is power on the other side. And I think that applies here. I think it's just having the information is really, really important. But the other thing to say specifically, if all this sounds kind of like just a lot of words, the other part that I want parents to hear clearly from me as superintendent is that when we get into the idea of a sex education curriculum, and we do have a sex education curriculum in Gower School District that plays out across all these grade levels, and we're specific about what happens at every grade level, what parents need to hear is the moment they shut off and go, oh, sex education, forget it. Totally respect the opinion. But what I want them to hear is there's always been and still is and will be, as far as I can see into the future, an opt-out for parents. So I think that's just really important for people to understand. I understand that there's, clickbait type articles and headlines that get a lot of attention and a lot of talk. I mean, that's what they're designed to do. I get all that, but that doesn't mean that it's not part of our reality. So having the information is just critical. We knew this a couple years back as questions came in. You could kind of see this coming and whatnot. So we just took the time to build a page out that's very much informational. If a parent calls and asks or emails, we direct them there first and say, I'm happy to answer your questions, but if you wouldn't mind, take a look there and see if it helps answer your question. So, anyone listening to this, if they go there and they have those questions still, any feedback on that is always helpful to us as administrators. Like, hey, this works for me. This was helpful. I gave it to my neighbor. I passed it along to this Facebook group or whatever. That would be super helpful. And if there's something missing that would be more helpful, hey, this is about progress, not perfection. So let us know.
Well, great. Thank you. Was there, we covered quite a bit, quite a range this evening. Was there anything that we did not talk about, or a question that wasn't asked that you think regarding the safety of students? Do you feel like anything? Did you want to share anything else? Was
Sure.
there anything
Yeah,
missed?
no, I appreciate it. I know we have a little bit of time left. I mean, it's just like, and I can get wordy in my answers, so I'm surprised we're not already over budgeted on time. But I'll tell you, when I heard about this topic and saw it come back, again, I want to keep something in mind here. Like the foundation saw the opportunity to provide information to more families and community members in Gower by hosting these podcasts. And they went out with a plan to say, let's ask families what they want to hear about. And they came back with these different episodes and whatnot. And I think that's fantastic. It's like, this is what people wanted to know about. So when I saw the one about mental and physical safety, like, what does that look like in Gower? This one, they're all very personal to me. This one, as I shared a little bit about my history, like that, it's super personal, not just because of me and the experience that I've had in my experiences in Chicago Public Schools, which could be its own separate podcast, hours long, but being a father, right? And having my children, I grew up, rough and tumble and different experiences in high school and grade school and whatnot. I never had to hide under a desk because of a lockdown drill, a lockdown. A drill is one thing. A drill could last in an instant, and we make sure that's very quick. Our doors are locked and we're good to go. Police are here to watch us do that, and it's over in a matter of seconds. So we've got that done with children's overall well-being in mind. But I'm talking about real life. Hey, there's a concern and children are hiding under a desk because of some threat of violence. I didn't go that way. I didn't grow up that way. Mine was, hey, there's sirens, put this book over your head, go in the hallway, things will be okay. That's not what we've got any longer. And it's tragic, honestly. So I think about my experience of raising children, guiding children. I've gone from caregiver to correctional officer as a parent, and now I'm in a coach and consultant mode. Of my children are much older, but that being said, I've had to watch them go through that. And I know some of the traumatic experience they had. And someone could say, hey, well, there really wasn't the gun. And it really wasn't an issue. Well, that's true. But in the code red world of you hiding, you didn't know that. And that's not okay. So I'm glad that we had a chance to talk a little bit about mental health and safety there. But I think that, again, I started this from the beginning. Children are not going to, we say children at their best. That's our motto. Right? We can have all these fancy terms and long strategic plans and books full and binders full of what we think we're going to do. But the motto is children at their best. So what that looks like happens every single day. You go home as a child, your parents are there, they ask you, a parent or whoever, to ask, how did they go? How did this day go? And so on. Just those responses are really, really important. We want to get those right time and time again, hundreds of times, right? 170 something times a year, repeated for every year they're here. So it's a lot of pressure, and it comes with this mindset of, in order for them to thrive, they have to feel safe. I know that's simple, but it is just so true, right? Like there's theory out there about this. You might have heard of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I'm sure as a social worker, you know that really, really well. There's another t-shirt idea. Impact over intent is on the front. Maslow before everybody would be on the back. If you can't get that part right with kids feeling safe, forget it. If they're not safe and feeling safe, the rest is going to be really difficult to get to if you ever can. So that's what I will close with.
Well, thank you so much for, I know I learned a lot this evening. I really appreciate you not only, giving us information about what's happening at Gower's, but also sharing some of those personal stories too. I'm so grateful for your commitment to Gower and our children and their safety. And I'm grateful to all the Gower staff for always ensuring our kids are safe and are thriving. And I'm proud to be part of the Gower community as well. And I'm again just grateful that you're taking on the challenge of these podcasts to continue to build and foster those relationships and keep getting the information out about all the wonderful things that Gower's doing. So thank you. And take care.
All right. Thanks. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Help me spread the word that when we talk about teachers, it's with a capital T. I'd love for people to recognize it that way. None of what we do happens without our amazing staff and our very, very supportive community. So from the Gower Foundation to put these podcasts together, to anybody listening and thinking about it and giving feedback, really, really appreciate it. Glad to do it. Looking forward to the next one.
Thanks.